One of the absolutely fundamental differences between the Labor Party and the coalition parties is freedom of choice, personal choice. It flows through many policies, of course, but it goes all the way to the party rules. Labor MPs are bound to vote with their party. If they cross the floor, if they vote against their own party, they are typically expelled from the ALP or at least suspended, and they're branded a rat for their trouble. Now, we showed you the breaking news last night of the Western Australian Labor Senator Fatima Payman, a Muslim, voting with the Greens and other radicals to support recognition of the State of Israel, the State of Palestine, something that is against Labor policy, of course, and which the Labor government senators were voting against. Now, apart from being an appalling decision by Senator Payman on the merits of the actual issue, it was a clear thumbing of the nose at party rules and an act of defiance against Anthony Albanese, a real test for his leadership, which was taken up in question time today.
When the Prime Minister condemned the violent River to the Sea chant, Labor Senator Fatima Payman publicly rebuked him and repeated it. Yesterday, Senator Payman crossed the floor to support the Greens' hate-filled campaign to foment social divisions on Palestine, apparently without consequences. Prime Minister Bob Hawke, when he was leader of the Labor Party, suspended 2 members for such actions. Every leader since him has stood up and shown strength of leadership. Will the Prime Minister do the same?
Well, the Prime Minister talked about the issue for a while, took a long while to answer the question, but eventually revealed that Senator Payman will not be expelled, will not even be suspended.
I met with Senator Payman earlier today. She will not be attending the Labor caucus for the rest of this session.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. What I do is show leadership for our united team.
Really? She'll skip the party meetings? There's only one left for this session, probably her choice anyway. I mean, I guess all Labor MPs now will be free to vote as they choose in Parliament from now on. Or is it just the case that Anthony Albanese couldn't risk offending Muslim voters? Let me bring in former Labor frontbencher Michael Danby. Michael, thanks for joining us. We'll come to the actual foreign policy issue in a moment. But first up, Albanese has just shown weakness, hasn't he, as a leader by not doing anything, not really offering any sanction against his own senator for crossing the floor.
In a previous zeitgeist, Chris, in the Labor Party, the National Executive, who were meeting later this week, would have expelled Senator Payman. Or, as Peter Dutton pointed out, the 2 senators more than 25 years ago were suspended by the Labor caucus. This won't happen. Senator Payman is clearly a diversity pick. She's young, Muslim, just as you pointed out, and they won't want to offend the current correlation of forces inside the Labor Party. She's a bit of a fluke, Chris. She got elected as the number 3rd person on the ticket in West Australia, Labor winning 3 of the 6. And I suspect her friends in the socialist left won't be so kind to her and bump her up the ticket next time. So I think this might be the term of Senator Payman.
Well, there you go. Let me show you also what the Deputy Prime Minister said, because often the Deputy Leader is seen as the enforcer of discipline and party rules. Here's Richard Marles.
We want to walk down a path of bringing Australians together, and to be at this moment suggesting that we're going to expel people for a particular view would be doing precisely the opposite. And ultimately, Fatima Payman is a person who is making a real contribution in the Senate on behalf of the Australian Labor Party. She wants to continue to do that, and she will.
Yeah, so instead of disciplining her, they actually make excuses for her. Now, we're a Jewish MP, you're a Jewish man, Michael, but there are Jewish Labor MPs in the Parliament as we speak. How do you reckon they would go if they voted against Labor on the Palestine issue in Parliament?
Well, that's the danger of identity politics in being so important, and including in this case, because you don't want to feel like you've got special treatment because you're from some minority. You want to be judged, as Martin Luther King said, by the content of your character, not the background that you come from. And I can't understand Senator Payman. Her family fled the terrible regime in Afghanistan. And here she is in Australia, dying on a hill to support the brutes in Hamas who had control of Gaza and who committed all of those brutalities on October 7th. It seems not an issue that I would adulate anyone on, but as I say, you've correctly noted, Chris, the change in the atmosphere and the zeitgeist over these issues, and someone who's a diversity pick, who's of Muslim origin, nothing will happen to them, despite the fact it would have against every other person. And as a traditional Labor person, I would argue should. Maybe not expulsion, but certainly suspension.
Yeah. Now, it comes to this issue of why Muslims around the world support the Palestinian cause. Obviously, there's the Walma, I think, is the term, this sort of brotherhood of Muslims around the world. Well, they'll support each other. That's something for people to make in their political arguments. But you make the very powerful point that Senator Payman came from an Islamist extremist regime where women were discriminated against, where there was violence and bloodshed. She came here as a refugee. So the last thing you'd think you'd support is an evil Islamist extremist regime like the Hamas one that's now been overthrown in Gaza.
Where they throw LGBTQ people off roofs, where hundreds of women are killed in honour killings, where the rape of Israeli women, the sexual violence was documented by the UN, and this is something that the zeitgeist is soft on. So Albo's, as you amusingly pointed out, is not having a turn up to one more meeting, but disappointed by Richard Marles. But then again, I am generally with his weak stance on defence and defence procurement and energy issues that you've spoken about many times. But that's the Labor Party. It's changed from the days of Bob Hawke, Kim Beazley, Paul Keating, and it's dominated by the socialist left, and anything that suits them are the events that dominate the Labor Party. She was selected by the socialist left in West Australia, not expected to get elected. She fluked it as the number 3. She's being given special treatment now, and the only long-term outcome of this is, I suspect, she won't be bumped up the ticket, and Labor may not get the 3rd position at the next Senate election in West Australia.
Michael Danby, thanks so much for joining us with your analysis there. Former Labor frontbencher Michael Danby joining us from Melbourne.